Hey, my name's Alicia Taverner. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in Rancho Cucamonga, California, and I'm joined by my colleague, Erika Labuzan-Lopez, who is in Texas.
You got it. Yeah. I'm an LPC and LMFT in League City. It's right outside of Houston, Texas.
And so we wanted to have this conversation today because number one, most therapists, if not all right now, have moved their practices online. And so we kind of wanted to just demonstrate what it is like to do online therapy, which is just like this, right? Like us having a conversation with one another online. And I know that the two of us use a couple different platforms. So Erika, why don't you tell the people what your platform is like and what that looks like?
Yeah, so I use a platform called doxy.me. It's been working really well for me so far. I used it before kind of everybody made this dash online. And, there are the occasional audio glitch or video glitch, but overall, it's worked really, really well. It's pretty simple. I just send my clients a link. They log right on. They go in like a digital waiting room, and then they just wait for me to start the meeting. So it really, really couldn't be any simpler.
Mm-hmm. And I use something called Simple Practice, which is pretty simple as well. So my clients get a link, and I believe they get it sent like 20 minutes before and then 10 minutes before our meeting time. And if they're using a desktop or a laptop computer, they just click and we're connected. And so it looks very similar to this, where we're just, kind of like how you would be face to face or like FaceTime or Skype. I know that if my clients are using a cell phone, then it will ask them to download an app, which the clients have given me feedback that it's a simple process, and then they click and they're able to connect. And so we wanted to just demonstrate this if people are on the fence about doing online therapy, right? Because right now there's a lot of stuff going on in our world, but our emotional experiences aren't stopping. And so Erika and I both work with couples, right? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your practice, Erika?
Yeah, so I work with couples who are experiencing communication problems and conflict. That's usually why they come in. But of course, we know once we dig into all this stuff, there's so much more. I also work with infertility and postpartum. So I feel like these are all things that we need to be paying attention to. Just because, we've got all these big things happening in the world doesn't mean that these other issues aren't still ongoing, kind of what you were talking about, right? Like our lives are still going, but we're just adjusting everything within our lives. And so I like to think about it like people are going to start seeing all these problems, and we tend to think, or people tend to think that these changes are causing the problems in our relationships, but really they're just highlighting the problems we already had. So for me, this is actually a perfect opportunity for people to start looking at that in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that like for couples, whatever's happening in the relationship, now we're quarantined together and things
Right.
are like under a, microscope, everything is kind of bigger or like a magnifying glass, right? Like the issues are there, but there's nowhere to go now. And so I've actually had people reach out, and I've had couples who have said like now is actually a really good time to work on the relationship because they have more time, right? Like with their schedule changes and kids not being in school, that now is a good time.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm kind of wondering if you've seen what are the advantages and disadvantages you've seen working in this way so far with your couples?
Um, so I think you and I had a conversation about this a little bit earlier, and we were talking about now kids are home, and so we're seeing a different dynamic. When couples come to the office, we just see the two of them face to face in our space, but now it's kind of like we're seeing them in their space, right? So seeing what's in the background, and a lot of times like there's kids coming in and out, and I think that I've had a couple clients that I've worked with in the last week or so who said they didn't know how it was going to go, because they have a 2-year-old
Yeah.
or a small child running around and they're worried about them interrupting the session. However, like working with them and seeing the dynamic that the two partners have with their child or multiple children, it brings up even more clinical stuff for us to talk about, and how do we navigate like the parenting stuff, and how do we communicate about that. So we're seeing a little bit more, I think, than we generally would see, but I think it's really good. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. I've really enjoyed like getting the opportunity to peek into people's lives a little bit more than we might normally. Of course, they still have control over, what we're kind of gonna see in a way, right? Like they can pick which room in their house or go to their car or whatnot. So, um, I know we chatted a little bit yesterday, and I was kind of reflecting on some of the things we talked about. I recently read Lori Gottlieb's book, Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. And she's a therapist. Yeah. It's a really good book, right? And she's a therapist
I
talking
loved
about
it.
doing therapy. And part of her, there was like a whole chapter on this idea that she's seeing just the smallest snippet really of people's lives, right? Like she's only in the room with them for an hour a week, and only what they're bringing to her. And so I was kind of thinking about that. Like we're still only spending an hour a week with our clients, but we're getting such a larger like snap of what that is. We're getting a bigger picture. And I think it's really cool as a therapist.
Yeah, and we're seeing a little bit more, but it's not intrusive, in any
Right.
way. Like I'm in my bedroom
Exactly. Just a
now.
little bit more, right? It's not the whole thing.
Yeah. And sometimes there's like my kids, jiggling the handle while I'm in session. They know I'm in session, and my husband's out there with them, but sometimes they escape, right? and try and see what I'm doing. But that's happening for parents across the board, right? Like as we kind of try to navigate what this looks like, working from home with kids in the background.
Yeah, it's definitely a different experience, but I think, something we touched on the other day too was um, really allowing us to share our genuine experience. Like you said, when your kiddos are there at the door, right? Mom, and that's your experience, but it's also probably their experience. And we're all going through this thing, right? Like together. And I think in a way that we would not previously be able to do with clients.
Yeah, definitely. Um, and so speaking of like the privacy issue, right? I think that some clients might be a little bit apprehensive, thinking like I don't have a designated space, or like it can't be confidential. What are some of the things that you've told your clients in terms of navigating that?
Yeah, so I do want to validate people's concerns about that. It's definitely going to be harder to find that space than it is to come, to the office where we're more protected in terms of that. But I think that it's a good chance to practice flexibility and thinking about things in different ways. So I've definitely encouraged clients to have sessions in their car, to sit outside.
Mhm.
Or to have if it's an individual, to have their partner take the kiddos outside, and that's their outside time while they get to have their sessions in one of the rooms of their house. I've even had clients, I'm going on a walk with my client and, we're both outside, or just they're outside. And so there are different ways, I think, to get some of that space. It's just, it's just going to look different than anything else that we've done before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think, yeah, I've talked to clients who are in their cars,
Yep.
because that provides a good space for them to have like this quiet, confidential space away from like the noisy background that's going on in the household. But for couples, I've had couples, just kind of put their kids with the movie in the next room. They might come in every now and then to ask for whatever, and then one partner can kind of deal with that while we kind of continue, and then we just dive right back in. I haven't seen it to be a problem. If anything, I think it's actually a benefit.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't, it hasn't been a huge disruption. And I know you're sharing with me that you've actually had a chance to use it in the sessions, which is really cool
Mm-hmm.
too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think everything is kind of grist for the mill when we talk about therapy, right? Like as a therapist, we're continually pointing out like things that we see right in the room. Now we just see a little bit more of the room and a little bit more people who are in the room, right? And I've always described therapy to couples as kind of like, you guys are, you know, sitting on this couch, and we're just peeking under the rug as a therapist, you know, like what's under here and what's behind here, and let's flesh that out more and let's talk about that. So if anything, I think it's been a really great experience.
Yeah, I agree.
And so, what is the focus of your practice?
What do you mean?
Like mainly couples?
Gotcha. Yeah, I mainly see couples. So couples really at any phase of their relationship. I do work with infidelity quite a bit. So that's something that I'm trained in, know how to help people with. But I also see a lot of parents with young kids. I think it kind of relates to some of my other specialties. So they may wander upon my page based on some of those things, the infertility and postpartum.
Mhm.
And then I'm actually going to be adding a new niche soon. I'm sort of fleshing that out around minimalism. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah. So using that in a therapeutic sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually have been able to already bring it into work with couples. Um, I think that a coping skill a lot of people use to deal with their relationship problems is, I'm just going to buy this or fill my life with this, or, it's just another coping skill, much like we see in couples therapy with, um, you know, almost anything, right? Working too much, drinking, going out. So I think that a lot of people are finding themselves in a place of just keeping and holding on to so many things. So actually getting to do some really cool work with a couple on letting some of that go, and we're moving through the relationship problems while also letting go of some of the tangible pieces of evidence that things weren't really going well.
Hmm. Yeah, very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. I'd love to. What are your couples doing? What are they about?
So we specialize in helping couples improve their communication, their connection, their intimacy, and trust. So infidelity work is a big piece in my practice as well. But then also like the general, most couples will say they want to work on communication, improving
Right.
their connection as well. So helping them navigate like managing their conflicts and things like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen that this has really allowed people to integrate the things that you're teaching them in session or like reviewing with them in session into their everyday life since they are together so much now?
Yeah, so I have kind of a mixed, I think some people are still working, and then others, there's like two parents in the household together trying to navigate this whole thing. So, it's a mix. And I see some individual couples as well. I mean, individuals as well, not with the couple, just the individuals who are working through relationship stuff, either on their own or having moved out of a relationship or things like that.
Nice.
So having said all of that, again, this is what an online session would look like. I mean, the platform might be a little bit different, but we're basically just having a conversation, and the same way that you would with your therapist in the room. So I hope this has been helpful. And as we end, Erica, is there anything that you would like people to know about online therapy?
So I just encourage people to be open-minded to it. If you are still working, you've probably discovered Zoom anyway. I'm always joking with clients. I've never talked about Zoom so much in my whole life as we have in the past like 3 weeks. But I would encourage people to either look online or ask around, get some referrals, and then give those therapists a call. Most people offer free phone consultations, and so I think like expressing your concern perhaps about online therapy, or just sharing that would be a new experience or something you hadn't considered before, and really taking that time and taking advantage of that consultation to ask all the questions you want. And I always tell people definitely get a sense of the therapist in that phone call. Are they genuine? Are they going to help you walk through this? Are they a calming presence? There's definitely some things I think you can get out of that phone call that will lead you to decide if that's the right person for you or not.
Right. And we know that the research tells us that the benefit of therapy and those people who get the most out of therapy that really comes from the relationship that you're able to develop with your therapist. So if you call them and you have a conversation over the phone and you feel comfortable or don't feel comfortable, you know, like you are the consumer. So finding somebody that you feel like, yeah, like we really vibe with each other. I feel like I can connect with their message that they have online and can connect with them over the phone. That's really going to be what you want to look for, and their specialty as well. You know, you want to be with somebody who specializes in the thing that you're looking to work through.
Well, definitely. And I think, I think some other advantages of this situation and bringing online therapy to a wider audience is also that you don't even have to be in the same city as your therapist. So if you find somebody online that you really connected with their videos or their blogs and you find them helpful, you do need to live in the same state, but you don't even have to worry about it. We're all doing stuff online, so you don't have that same pressure of trying to find somebody down the street from your office or whatever it might be.
Exactly. Yeah. So you have a little bit more like wider of a net to cast when you're looking for a therapist. And so I know that sometimes people can be apprehensive. And personally, like my son is 5 years old and he had been doing occupational therapy in person, obviously. And then so when we had our shelter in place order put into place, his therapist contacted us and asked if we wanted to do the therapy online, which initially I was kind of like, I don't know how that's going to work. But I gave it a shot and I'm really, really glad that we did. But a lot of the stuff that they're doing is like very physical. And so she's had him do like the exercises and stuff, and we've been able to utilize things that we have around the house. But one thing is that I've noticed is like it gives him really like something to look forward to, right? Like he's counting down the days till he gets to talk to his therapist and have his time. And I think that that's important for everybody, right? Like to have your own time, have something to look forward to. And if you're having challenges in your relationships, like what better thing to look forward to than like this time to kind of really hash them out, because we can push that aside all the time, right? Like there's never a right time to start therapy.
I totally agree. And I love hearing that about your son, that's something he's like excited about, right? And also on the minimalism side, you can take advantage of using what you already have. And so being creative, I think, in that way. Yeah, I totally agree. I don't think there's any right time. And I also don't think there's any wrong time to start therapy.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like, we're dealing with stuff all the time. So may as well do it when we can.
Yeah. So I hope that's been helpful. If you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to either of us. I'm going to put our contact information in the description box below. But thanks for joining us. And thanks
Thank
for
you for having
talking
me.
with me. Of course, thanks. So good luck to everybody out there as you shelter in place. Stay safe and healthy.